All right, so let's take a look at a speech. You might get a speech like this on the IB English exam. So let's see what kind of literary devices the author uses, and let's try to analyze their effects. Here we go. So it says here, comment on the literary devices used in the extract from JFK's inaugural speech, and its effect in terms of the message he intends to convey. Okay, here we go. So this is a very iconic speech. It's probably the speech that was a defining aspect of JFK's presidential career, and probably one of the reasons why he is so highly regarded. And well, it's a truly inspiring speech to say the least. Let's take a look. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. Okay, so right away, we have an element of contrast here, right? So the victory of party implies a sense of competition, right? But he's saying that's not what we should really pay attention to. Celebration of freedom seems like this word is the more um, important thing rather than a particular party's victory. Now, he says symbolizing an end as well as a beginning. So we have an element of what we have juxtaposition here, right? End and beginning. And renewal as well as change. Renewal signifying, a continuation of something, and that is the opposite of change. So another instance of juxtaposition. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God, the same solemn oath are forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. So referring to the founding fathers. And this solemn oath referring to defending the cause of freedom. Now, I guess his tone, there's quite a religious tone, right? Almighty God. A very serious tone, solemn oath. So the sense of the religious tone here, I guess, serves to convey, it adds weight it adds a sense of gravity to the speech. There's a clear gravitas here. Now, he goes on to say, the world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. So we have an instance of repetition, all forms, all forms. Now, let's look at these two things. So, abolishing poverty, this is a good thing, right? That's a positive. Abolishing all forms of human life, that's clearly a negative. So in our hands, in the hands of humans, we have this enormous power. In terms of perhaps the weapons that we possess. So, mind you, I think the nuclear arms race, the tension that the US faced with the Soviet Union, I think that serves as a backdrop here. That's the context. So, nuclear power, nuclear arms, the fact that they can destroy all forms of human life. So that stands in contrast to the better angels of our nature, where we're willing to help others and eradicate things like disease or poverty. In this case, here refers to poverty. So what are we going to do as a species? How are we going to use our power? For good or for evil? That is the question. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. Belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. So again, we have a reference to God. So the rights of man. So we first discuss freedom, and then we discuss human rights. So these things are given to us. Well, of course, we have to fight for them, but there's an inherent sacredness about them, something that God has given to every man that we must defend at all costs. Okay. Now, let's get to this part here. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Okay. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in the century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of these human rights, of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Okay. So right away, there's a sense of formality, right? In terms of there's a formal tone that's established. The first revolution and the word heirs, like implies a sense of continuation of a tradition, right? So, defending the cause of freedom and human rights, those things have to be, such a thing has to be continued. Let the word go forth from this time and place. Now, here, what do we have? To friend and foe alike. Okay, and then he goes on to say, the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans. So we have an instance of imagery, right? We can all imagine what a torch looks like. Mixed with it serves as a metaphor. Metaphor for what? The fact that the torch has been passed to a new generation. What is this torch referred to? It's a transfer of duty, right? So it was the duty of the forebears to defend the cause of freedom and human rights. And now it's incumbent upon the new generation of Americans to defend freedom and the rights of man. So that's what the effect the phrase the torch has here. Born in the century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace. Okay, so what do I notice here? I guess a kind of, I see a bit of a rhythmic cadence here. The way these verbs are mentioned in sequence, born, tempered, and disciplined. I do like the use of the words tempered and disciplined. What do these things convey? A sense of restraint, which entails what? A real mature perspective. So war has caused, I guess, in this instance, the United the United States leadership to be perhaps less inclined to go to war, given that a hard and bitter peace was earned. Peace did not come, it came at a cost. So you wouldn't be easily inclined to go to war if you understand the cost of war, right? So the cost of war is there's a heavy cost. It takes a toll on people. So the sense of restraint here, I guess, really is indicative of a kind of steadfast, mature leadership. Exercising restraint is important, isn't it? Being able to control your emotions. if we were to let just our emotions always get the best of us, I wouldn't, I don't think that would allow for a great deal of productivity. What else we got? Unwilling to witness permit the slow undoing of those human rights. Okay, so I guess the mentioning of this unwilling to witness or permit, heightens a sense of commitments. Mm. Now, let's pay attention to this part. So we do have an instance of anaphora here. Where is it? Let the word go forth, let every nation know. So we have the words let. This for sure is a repetition of the word let, but they're a little bit sparsely placed, right? For it to qualify as a, for me to mention this as part of the essay, um, that analyzes the literary devices, I wouldn't mention this because I want to see anaphora used in sequence. I want to see, let the word go forth, let every nation know, and then let again. Another sentence that starts with the word let, and they can't be placed too far apart. It would, because an important aspect of repetition in anaphora is the sense of rhythm that gets established. But there's too much text in between this let and this let. Okay. But when there isn't, you can, include it as part of your analysis in the essay. Okay, let's see how this sentence unfolds. Let every nation know whether it wishes us well or ill. All right, so whether it's our enemy or whether it's our ally, we shall pay any price, spare any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe. And then what do we care about? Survival and the success of liberty. So we talked about freedom here. We got liberty here. Now, pay attention to, I guess there is an instance of alliteration here, right? These consonants bear any burden. But I wouldn't pay too close attention to that. What I would pay attention to is the kind of parallelism here that's used. Pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe. You see, they all consist of three words. So it's clearly there's a sense of rhythm that gets established here. And so in terms of style, that's what we see. In terms of the content, the meaning behind these phrases, they're all meant to convey the degree to which JFK sees the United States being, committed to this important cause of freedom, right? Okay, so based on these things, let's see what kind of essay we could come up with. Now, this is an intro, and this is a body paragraph. All right, so let's just take a look at these two paragraphs, so we get an idea as to how you would go about writing an essay. So what does an intro need to do? In the first sentence, I wrote, the advocacy of freedom and human rights is the hallmark of a democratic society. So right away, I zoomed out and discussed these two things, right? Remember, these two things were the main themes that are being discussed. So from a general perspective, yeah, I would say I would mention this. And then how would I continue the intro? So I would include the author's name and the title. In this instance, there isn't a particular title. It's just it's his inaugural speech. So I would just say inaugural speech, and then the author's name again, and in relation to this general observation, delves into this issue regarding human rights and freedom while addressing. And now we have the audience that's mentioned. So this is the audience. Now, if you want to specify, you could say, addressing his fellow Americans who are inspired and looking forward to, a new era, a new beginning. You could add something like that, but I would say this should do. All right. many times, the IB English essay prompt and its instructions mentions, audience, purpose, um, context, right, and stylistic features, right? So I think the main thing, I mean, so these things, you end up talking about naturally, but audience, that's something that you might have to like sort of specifically insert into your sentences. So I think this should do here as far as audience is concerned. And then we have a thesis statement. What is a thesis statement? Through the use of metaphor, anaphora, parallelism, and hyperbole. JFK makes clear his vision for a people willing to stand with him in championing such causes. All right. So defending these causes. All right. So, these literary devices, you could choose whichever one you want. It depends on which quote you want to analyze. All right. And of course, you can always go back and cross something out that you chose not to, analyze. You can do whatever you want with it. I would say the intro is just kind of has to be there. I wouldn't say that that's where the game is played. The game is largely played in the body paragraphs, especially here. So body paragraphs, what do we need to discuss? The literary device, the actual textual evidence, so the quote, and then the intent and effect of that quote. And then we need a closing statement. All right. So these things are just have to be there, just have to be there formality wise. The actual part where the examiners will pay attention to is this, the intent and effect. What is the overall effect? What is the author trying to accomplish here? That requires a lot more thinking. So that's where your critical thinking skills will be used and revealed. And they will grade your work accordingly. Here we go. So we have literary device here, right? Metaphor. And then I have the quote. The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans. Okay. So I'll also mention imagery of the torch. Now what's the effect? The effect is it encapsulates the fact that duty and honor are passed down from one generation to the next. This carrying of the torch serves as an allusion to the American Revolution, as JFK links the present generation to the founding fathers and the struggle to gain independence and freedom. So this kind of connection to the past, thus evoking a connection between the history and the present with respect to the tradition and responsibility of defending the most sacred ideals. So yeah, we don't exist in a vacuum. We are the descendants of our forebears, our ancestors. And what they held dear, perhaps, still applies. We should still hold them dear and fight for them. Now let's move on to a different literary device, parallelism. As he states, and then I list these things. I insert the quote that we saw before. Okay, what's the effect? The effect is it underscores his commitment to shouldering, oops, got a little typo here, shouldering the cost of upholding freedom while incorporating a set of phrases that poetically capture a sense of rhythm that enhances the emotional impact. Okay, so the main phrase that the examiner will look for is underscores his commitment. Okay, so everything that we see here, pay any price, bear any burden, let's mark that in yellow. All these things are meant to convey his commitment to upholding freedom. Of course, I do insert the phrase shouldering the cost, because paying any price and bearing any burden, all these things are not easy, right? Meeting any hardship, supporting any friend, and opposing any foe, these things are not easy. So that has to do with shouldering the cost. All right. Now, I also mentioned so that's in terms of content. What about in terms of style? Incorporating a set of phrases that poetically capture a sense of rhythm that enhances the emotional impact. So I discussed before sense of rhythm established by this, the fact that they all have, they're all 3-word phrases, right? Pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, and support any friend, oppose any foe. So that has a great sense of, an effective sense of rhythm. And it reads like a poem in that respect. A most mature perspective regarding leadership shines through as JFK articulates a defining aspect of the generation of Americans who are, oh, there should not be a comma here, tempered by war, disciplined by hard and bitter peace. Okay. So being able to come up with this kind of interpretive language when you look at word tempered and disciplined, hard and bitter, the sense of maturity, that's what I'm able to glean from the text here. Restraint. Restraint is a synonym for being disciplined, right? Being tempered. What does it refer to? Sense of restraint JFK refers to here serves to lay bare his understanding of the nature of conflict, and that is what this maturity refers to, right? It's maturity. Yeah, conflict is never easy to resolve. That both war and peace come at a heavy cost, thus making clear the need to, this kind of maturity and this kind of restraint. You don't always act on your emotions. It requires great sense of emotional restraint to make wise decisions. You got to be careful when navigating the complexities of domestic affairs and global challenges. All right. So this whole thing here has been where the intent and effect have been discussed. So you got to be pretty methodical in terms of discussing the intent and effect. This is where your points are earned. Yeah. That's what you really need to devote all your energy to. Let's look at how what the closing statement looks like. In this fashion, JFK invokes the imagery of a torch and employs the rhythmic cadence of parallelism to emphasize that it's incumbent upon, so it is our duty to stay committed to standing up for the principles of freedom and human rights. So that closing statement serves to summarize what's been analyzed here. So it just has to be there. But by and large, the intent and effect, this part here, you have to come up with a elaborate, detailed, insightful analysis. And that's where the game is played. Okay. All right. So hopefully that gives you an idea as to how this writing process works.